How can we know what the truth is? What is truth? I have a friend who often asks in our conversations, how do we determine a true thing from a non true thing? This question immediately brings whatever topic is at hand back to the level of metaphysics and epistemology. Without trying to be exhaustive, I would like to present a positive case for how I approach answering this question, as there is simply no quick sentence to satisfy this inquiry before moving on. The way I approach truth is the way I assume and hope all people do, instinctively and intuitively. I first learned to smile by reacting to my mother's smile and copying it. I first encounter love and being prior to grasping and understanding in an intellectual sense in order to call it knowledge. This would indicate that we begin to understand truth by virtue of our relationships. We understand the world around us via our relationship to others, other creatures, and the cosmos itself. We understand the relata through the relationships, and to some degree, vice versa. As a default, there is at least some amount of trustworthiness in the testimony of others based on their good standing in society, which is just a web of relationships. We believe many things based off of the testimony of those we trust, and oftentimes we find ourselves incapable personally of grasping the data, evidence, or arguments at hand in order to verify or make true something directly. We delegate this duty to those who devote their lives in various areas of study, and who in many cases produce results consistent with their testimony of what they have discovered or learned. Of course, there are some cases where what is being described can never be verified by us, even in principle, either because of a lack of our ability or because we have no way of gathering the proper data to remove all reasonable doubt. This applies to many kinds of events, not least stories from your grandfather's childhood. This is why one's trustworthiness is so important in evaluating their experiences of reality. We must acknowledge that at least one major aspect of coming to understand truth is in the light of all of the many relationships in our lives. There are other criteria to consider: coherence and correspondence. In brief, the total set of our assented beliefs must be coherent, to not be in blatant or obvious contradiction with one another. In all layers, and preferably correspondent to our actual experience, both individually and collectively. That is, corresponding to reality. If something is contrary to our personal experience, either individual or collectively, it gives us room for doubt and need for further inquiry before assent is given. Different people coming from different backgrounds, so correspondence may rely on the scientific method, various historical methods, and ultimately philosophical argumentation to tie everything together. Some essential starting beliefs, based on both experience and basic logical conclusions, can be considered properly basic. Beliefs in this category are more or less assumed, or more properly, intuited. Belief in other minds, the external world, and even the ground of reality, for many people this is God, are intuited and assumed from the outset. Belief in the freedom of choice, will, etc. is also properly basic by virtue of our direct, lived experience. This leads us to a critical point. How might beliefs be abandoned, rejected, and how might new ones be accepted? What makes a new belief true when previously it was false or non-true in our minds? Briefly, we must go over two types of defeaters: undermining and overriding. Undermining defeaters are those that draw into question the reliability of the source from where we obtained a belief, or other supporting beliefs that hold that particular belief in good standing. If a man claims to have witnessed a murder, but no body is ever found, the man is discovered to have frequent hallucinations and mental episodes, requiring him to be on medication, etc., these data points undermine the credibility of his testimony. He may be telling the truth, but our being compelled to accept his statements as truth is undermined. Any and all data points that may stack up to undermine trust in the belief are considered to be undermining defeaters. These may add up to literally defeat the belief, requiring acceptance of a new belief or withholding assent to any belief in that category at all, which is itself a sort of meta-belief, since it requires one believe that withholding assent to particular beliefs is the reasonable position to take. Overriding defeaters are data points that are so strong there is no longer any reasonable way to maintain the previous belief. Discovery of data that completely contradicts the previous belief and is so strong so as to remove doubt. Think of a good man who wouldn't hurt a fly being accused of sexual assault, only to discover that in fact DNA evidence confirms he has committed the assault in question. Your belief about his innocence and good nature would shatter in an instant. Additional supporting data points may help to maintain a belief even if undermining defeaters are present, and even if overriding defeaters are present. Suppose video evidence was secured of the murder, confirming the mentally ill man's testimony, or suppose that significant evidence was gathered showing that the woman obtained the man's DNA sample from the trash and planted it. These data points would restore or help to maintain the previous belief despite certain kinds of defeaters being present. So we have testimony, experience, coherence, correspondence, and defeating data points that all help point us toward an understanding of the true. What else might there be to consider? In an effort to be brief, as I've stated, I will just say that discerning truth is inseparable from our experience in life. We have a relationship to truth, in that we desire it, search for it, and relish in it. It informs our behaviors. However, we cannot bottle it or box it up. It is something we live in and live towards. Our relationship to truth is one of love, or at least should be. We can never truly bottle or contain love. Love can never be fully understood as it is ineffable. I think truth is in some case in the same category. If I asked for the truth, you would require me to be more specific. Truth in what way? Truth about what? Or whom? In what scenario? If I clarified that I simply want the entirety of the truth, you might gesture toward reality itself. But how many facts would it take to fully explain the truth? Infinite facts, I would wager. Therefore, the truth can never be expressed in language. Not human language, at least. But there must be some kind of information that can encompass all truth in reality, some fact of the matter that can be expressed. This becomes especially complicated once we bring in philosophical and scientific conclusions concerning the origin of the universe and physical emergence, but that is beyond our scope for this exercise. Suffice to say, the finite human mind can never actually grasp the totality of what is truth. And truth is simply put, what is. Truth is reality. Truth is ultimately and finally what exists, everywhere present, filling all things. The best we have with truth is relationship to it, how we interface with it, how we react to it, how we use it, how we understand parts of it as it relates to specific things. This is why beliefs are so important. Beliefs are our direct interface with truth. What we think, how we think, why we think, are all parts of how we interface with truth at ever greater capacities. No discussion of truth and determining what is or isn't true can escape discussing and surrounding what is that we believe. What belief really is. Ultimately, determining a true thing from a non-true thing is all about establishing criteria, both new and intuited long ago, to determine what is present in reality and what is not. Always learning, always growing, because truth is infinite, at least to us. Much arguably, the vast majority of our beliefs operate on trust and faith in who is telling us something. None of us have the capacity to interface with the truth at all. None of us have the capacity to interface with the truth at all present levels under our collective capabilities. And so we trust those who seem trustworthy to explain, to teach, and to demonstrate. But we must be careful, for our understandings are always changing, especially on the physical front. There are layers to truth, and some beliefs have more weight behind them and take ever more defeating data points to bring them down. I hope you enjoyed this first video essay of mine. I think you'll notice that ultimately the question of what is true hinges on the question of what is reasonable, what should we believe? And this is always going to take us back to the question of metaphysics. What is the most reasonable starting point? What set of axioms are more justifiable than others? How can we know, and how do we know? And ultimately, as I've argued here and I've tried to present, none of us have the capacity to fully and finally understand all data points in all fields of expertise. We rely on each other, and thus we rely on testimony. Expert testimony, reasonable testimony, testimony that's backed up by evidence, maybe, yeah. But in all reality, in all truth, we can't ever fully verify if they're right. We take them at some degree on face value, especially if we don't have the capacity ourselves to understand where they're coming from, to understand what the experts are saying in whatever field. So then the question becomes, should we trust the experts? Should we trust people who've spent and dedicated their entire lives toward a field of study? I guess the answer to that is it depends. But yeah, I hope you enjoy your day, and I hope you keep trying to figure out what the truth is. Good luck. God bless.